Mae'r sesiwn nesaf brynhawn yma, wrth gwrs, mae pawb wedi cael ei bwyd, mae pawb wedi cael ei paneidiau, pawb wedi cychwyn blino, felly dwi'n falch dweud fod gyda ni gyfrannwr ardderchog nesaf, Taj Ali, fydd yn dod fyny. Mae Taj yn awdur llawrydd sydd efo diddordeb mewn dosbarth ac anghydraddoldeb. Anghydraddoldeb economaidd gymdeithasol yn benna. Mae o wedi leoli yn Luton ac wedi ysgrifennu'n helaeth ar faterion fel boneddigeiddio, hiliaeth a symudedd cymdeithasol. Taj is a regular contributor to Tribune magazine, covering industrial disputes and issues affecting working class communities. He is currently working on a public history project documenting the history of British South Asian political activism in the late 20th century. And I was fortunate to have a quick chat with Taj earlier, and I know that you will have a fantastic contribution from Taj this afternoon. So please, Taj, give a warm welcome to Taj.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for Shelter for inviting me. I want to talk today about the British class divide. I think two events have brought into sharp focus how deeply divided we are as a country. The cost of living crisis and indeed the pandemic have not just exposed the class divide, they have exacerbated it further. And that is very prominent when we look at housing. We know, for instance, that people living in overcrowded housing were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We know, for instance, that people living in poor social housing in unfit conditions were also disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. If we look at the statistics, the Office for National Statistics last year wrote a report. At the height of the pandemic, they found that people living in the most deprived areas were twice as likely to die from COVID-19 than people living in the least deprived areas. That is not a coincidence. Inequality literally kills. And there are many people up and down the country that are struggling at the moment. I come from Luton, and I'm proud to come from a diverse working class community. In my community, I see the impact of the housing emergency every single day. 1 in 66 people in my town are homeless. That's the highest rate of homelessness outside of London. And there are 10,000 people on the housing waiting list. There are many people sleeping rough on the streets. There are many people sleeping rough in cold temperatures. And I see them all the time. And it really breaks my heart that I'm seeing the same faces that I saw 10 years ago. You know, I've lived in Luton all my life, and quite frankly, things have not gone better, they have gone worse. Over time, I came to realize that this is not a universal experience, that there is a divide in this country, and that if working class people were represented well in policy debates, in government, in the media, we would have a better and robust strategy to deal with the housing emergency. There are over 100,000 children living in temporary accommodation in the UK. I want to talk to you a bit about one of my friends, Ayub, who grew up with me, and he lived in temporary accommodation, and he was forced to change address nearly 20 times as a child. That had a massive impact on his education. He was forced to pay for a taxi to get from one part of the town to the other. Nobody's going to change schools while they're sitting their GCSEs. So when he was forced out from his home and moved to bed and breakfast accommodation, living in a pub, living in a hotel, that had a massive impact on him. He's just graduated with a first-class degree from the University of Warwick, but there are plenty of working class kids that are falling behind, that are being impacted, not just in education, but also in health. We know, for instance, that children living in poor social housing are 25% more likely to develop a serious disability as a child. When you live in homes that are unfit for human habitation, what happens to those children in terms of their asthma? What happens to those children in terms of infections? What happens when those same children who have these infections and these illnesses are missing school? It has an impact on education. So housing for me is the root cause of so many wider issues in society. And it's about time that we started taking it seriously. I've gone to places like Brixton, and I've seen the impact that gentrification is having on those communities. Gentrification, often clothed in the language of redevelopment, of improving an area, making an area better to live. But the question is who for? For the Windrush generation that have been priced out of those communities. I was speaking to someone called Stedman who's lived in Brixton all his life. He is part of that community, and he says to me that as the rents are rising, shops are closing down. You know, markets that were vibrant back in the day, people have stopped going to them. Many of the richer communities that are coming into these areas walk straight past his market stall and they go to Port Brixton and expensive wine bars. So housing and making sure that we have affordable housing for working class communities is so important, because a house and a home is not just about an individual, it's about a community. It is the bedrock, it is the foundation, and it provides security, it provides a sense of community. Many have made long-standing friendships in these communities and they are being priced out. In Brick Lane in East London, a very vibrant, diverse community, home to fleeing Huguenots, home to fleeing Jewish communities historically, and now home to a very strong Bangladeshi community. The amount of people that are being forced out of the areas, the amount of curry houses that have had to close down because of rising rents, its proximity to the capital has meant that profit has been prioritized over people's lives. You know, to give you one example, I was speaking to Sotes Chowdhury. He's a young British Muslim, and he tells me that there is a lack of halal food available in this area. This is the slow, insidious rise of gentrification. These areas no longer cater to the communities that have historically lived there. And of course, we have the staycation crisis, the rise in second home ownership. And of course, that's a massive issue in Wales. I was speaking to people in Devon and Cornwall about the rise of short stay lets and the lack of affordable housing. I spoke to Susie in Cornwall, a single mother of two, and she lived in the town of Loo, and she said to me that she was being evicted from her home because the home was going to be converted to an Airbnb. And she told me that she cried herself to sleep every night because she was worried about where she was going to live. Every single night she cried in despair because there were no houses to rent in Cornwall. I remember I wrote that article in August 2021, and I looked on the websites, and there were 10,000 Airbnb listings in Cornwall. There were only 52 homes to rent in that same area. That is a demonstration of where our priorities are. We are not looking at social housing, we are looking at profit, and we need to change our language and our tone when we talk about housing. We've just passed the 5th anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire, and we need to remember that this was a preventable tragedy. This didn't come out of the blue. Grenfell Action Group, representing the residents of Grenfell, had actually warned prior to the Grenfell Tower fire, several years prior, that there were inadequate health and safety measures in place, that there was a real risk to their lives, that fire safety was not being taken seriously. They warned and they talked about these issues, but they were not heard. They were a predominantly working class community in one of the richest boroughs in Britain, Kensington and Chelsea. Kensington and Chelsea also happens to be one of the most unequal boroughs in Britain. It has the top 3 areas with the highest levels of deprivation in London, but it also has the top 3 areas with the least deprived residents living in those communities. And when you look at, for instance, the cladding that was put on Grenfell Tower, consultants knew that this was flammable cladding, but the priorities of the people living in that community were not taken seriously. In fact, there was reports from the developers talking about one of the reasons for putting cladding on these buildings was because it was an eyesore for rich people living down the street on the other side of the borough. So whose priorities are being taken into account when we talk about housing and when we talk about homes? Are we talking to those working class communities that have lived in these communities for nearly 30, 40, 50 years? The rhetoric around the people that need social housing, desperately need social housing, also needs to change. I remember a few years ago speaking to a local councillor in Luton, and he looked me in the eye and he said, Taj, what we need to do is we need to move homeless people outside of the town centre because they're a nuisance, they make our town look bad, and we need to kind of get them out of the town centre. That kind of rhetoric is unacceptable. That's the kind of rhetoric that leads to the wider social issues around housing. And you know what the saddest thing is? That conversation took place a few years ago. 6 months ago, I was in Birmingham, and I came across a rough sleeper. And he was tucked away on a side street, and he had nothing but a blanket and a coffee cup. And I asked him why he was tucked away on a side street rather than a main road where you might be able to get more support and help. And he said it was because he didn't want to be a nuisance. That same language that was employed, and that broke my heart. That man is not a nuisance. That man is a human being, and he deserves the same compassion, the same empathy, the same respect, the same social housing, adequate housing, safe housing as the rest of us. So rhetoric needs to change. We need to stop talking about housing like it's a commodity to be sold or a plaything for rich individuals. Housing is a human right, and we need to make it so. We have the capability and the know-how to tackle the housing emergency. What we lack is the willingness to do it. What we lack is the urgency to do it. And I think one of the reasons for that is because many of the people with power and influence in our society don't live and breathe what working class people live and breathe. How many of them have been evicted from their homes? How many of them have had bailiffs knocking on their door in the middle of the night and telling them they're going to have no place to stay at night? How many of them have slept rough on the streets? How many of them have grew up with mold and damp in their homes? I'm not saying you have to go through any of those issues to empathize with that situation, and I'm not saying you can't contribute to the housing emergency, but I do think if we had more people with lived experience of these issues, rooted in communities with a greater say, I think we would have a far better and more robust discussion when it comes to housing, and we'd certainly have more urgency to deal with many of these problems. If those residents of Grenfell Tower, those 72 lives that were lost, were living in a richer area, if those 72 people had not come from those communities, do we really think that their concerns would not be listened to? Khadija Said, a famous poet, a very talented individual, she had her whole life ahead of her, and her life was lost because of corporate greed and institutional neglect. And that's the level of incompetency, that's the level of neglect that we're talking about here. I sometimes think to myself, is solving homelessness possible? Is it possible? Do we really think we can solve the homelessness crisis? I think we can. I think we have to remember that we are the 6th richest country in the world. It is not a money issue, it is a priorities issue, because we can take money out for the interests of certain individuals. But when it comes to the poorest residents, we're told that it's complicated or it's complex. I remember when I was reading about the foundation of the NHS, many people said it was far-fetched and unachievable, but now we have it. It's not perfect, but it's certainly better than what we had before. And I think in the 21st century, it's about time that we become a bit more ambitious when it comes to housing. We think ahead. We think about those individuals that are suffering the most. And hopefully, if we do that, we will have a better discussion on housing in this country. At the end of the day, we have to remember, we're not just talking about housing here. We are talking about people's lives. We are talking about the lives of the weakest and the most vulnerable in society. And I think it's time that we remember that. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Taj. Thank you very much for that very passionate contribution this afternoon. And good to have you with us.